Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at what is probably the final version of what PortalCraft will be as far as meta at the moment goes until either nerfs or the next expansion releases. I'm expecting probably the expansion will come out before we see any major nerfs to this deck, especially considering a lot of cards will be rotating out, like Hamlin, Neapolitan Amulet I think was part of that set, and Flower Doll and stuff like that will be rotating out, of course, which kind of is disappointing. It's going to be sad to see a lot of those go, but hopefully that'll, of course, shift the meta quite a bit. So we're going to get right into this and check it out. So this deck is a very reliable deck in the current rotation meta, and going up against Portal initially here, of course, does show that it's very common on ladder, because it is just that good. Having two win con options and being able to set up a lot of removal is one of the best strategies you can possibly have for this deck. Usually though, you do want a hard mulligan for Omen. That tends to be the best way to do it. I usually try and mulligan for that as hard as I can. But I also don't mind keeping this line of play because, of course, Inspired Inventor into Healing into Disciple gives you a really good chance at drawing it out, especially going first where you can't even use Omen until turn 5 anyway, so I definitely prefer going down that strategy. I also made sure to do the early off trade just in case of any future issues. Fortunately, doesn't look like it's going to be a problem. And we get a good chance to go for our destruction. And of course we get Omen. This is why I go for this kind of strategy, because the more draws, of course, makes it the more likely. And Destructive Reframe is actually pretty decent. And Flower Doll. So this is actually a very straightforward matchup as far as things go. Once you get Omen on board, you just need to make sure you can generate puppets continuously and trade them in. That's where things like Hamlin and Wind Up come in really handy. Even Steelclad Minotaurs here is not really helpful. That's much better to be played later in the game at around turn 7, but considering that I've already got Omen on board, they obviously thought, hey, I've got to play this now because it's probably not going to be valuable enough later, or they have a second one in hand where they could afford to play one out reasonably early. But we're pretty much going to wipe this as quickly as possible. I would like to have used Wind Up. Unfortunately, the fact that we're not in Resonance makes it a much worse card to play, especially when I can just go for Hamlin plays with the Puppet Room and set that up as well. Although I will have to probably sacrifice this Evo point, which means we're not going to be using Maisha in this match. But that's not usually a huge issue. Most people aren't running cards that easily counter destruction, especially when in a mirror like this. Although people probably should start taking in some cards to counter things like destruction and other win cons. It might be a good idea. I mean, the only card that Portal will typically run is Neapolitan Amulet, because that avoids the majority of big win cons like Rune and, of course, Portal. But we can easily go for all these puppet plays. We've set ourselves up nicely to go for Destruction in Black next turn if we want to. With the fact that we also get a puppet at the end of this turn, we actually get a little more value as well. Since we could easily go Wind Up into puppets and then play Destruction if we want to. This card's a little bit of a problem though. I don't want to leave it up and risk taking too much damage, but at the same time I'd really love to get Destruction in Blackout. Unfortunately, I don't think I can do both, so I decided to go for, of course, the Heartless Battle with Victoria. Bane will deal with that quite nicely, and I can easily just play these puppets out now since I don't really have a reason to hold on to them, and it'll drop out Destruction next turn quite easily. Plus, with these puppets now, we should be able to play Substitution at the same time. So that's even better. Which means we'll get to banish this follower and set up Destruction in Black on basically an empty board. The only real issue will be any kind of Maisha play, and that's where we're going to be in some trouble. So hopefully, we can work something out for that. So I did decide to trade off the puppets, decreasing our stuff even further and getting that down low enough to use the Substitution in a more practical way. But we do have a double Disciple of Destruction. That's going to be where we're going to go for our win condition, I think. They decided not to go for any damage, which is interesting. Obviously, because they want just the puppets. So our chances that we have 4 draws on 20 cards to draw, I think 1 amulet. I think we have 1, maybe 2. But we did end up getting it. Thank God that will protect us from any kind of Maisha play, which is what I'm expecting our opponent to drop, considering the way they've been playing this match. So it was risky, of course, to try and make that play. But I think definitely worthwhile. And more often than not, a play like that will turn out positive. I've had a lot less chances of it going bad than going good, so definitely a nice way to play things. So for the next match, we're up against Haven, another very popular match in the rotation meta right now. Haven, Portal, Dragon seem to be the top 3, with things like Blood taking up the rear quite quickly on them. At least based on tournament results and the like, so not uncommon. Starting off pretty nicely with these inspired inventor. Definitely the way I like to start a match in this with this deck is always going for that turn 1 drop. Especially when I can go for the miraculous invention straight off it with some healing. Even if I don't always take advantage of it, it's a nice card just to have on board. Especially with stuff like Joy of Destruction. We are lacking any kind of concrete win condition though to aim for right now, other than probably just hoping for a Maisha in the future. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. We're going to start being able to flood our hand with puppets. And go for another Inspired Inventor, since there's no real reason not to at this point. Since we're going to lose one either way. Most likely lose both, honestly. Saint Hairs. A little bit of a problem. We do want to deal with as much of this as we can. Subjugation would be perfect right now, or Substitution, whichever one that one is. I always really blank on it, but Omen of Destruction actually isn't too bad, since we do have so many puppets right now. Since we can easily remove this with Joy of Destruction, we can limit what damage we take, and we can also use the puppets. So, we're going to wipe these quite easily. The only thing left is that little 2-2, which really isn't a problem right now. And if they wipe out this, we can actually go for white very quickly. Not that we'll probably want to immediately. Although this hand makes me want to really go for white. But I decided to take the Marionette Lad instead, since it is a pretty solid body. And it's a free Evo on this turn, so why not play it? While trading off the couple of puppets. This way, at least, like if I play Destruction in white, I trade in some puppets, I can set up for Destruction in black on turn 8 and really start to do some damage. It's always a potential way to go. The only problem now is we do have to deal with this. Hamlin looks promising. I mean, it's not super ideal, but it's going to work out pretty nicely. Since we still have the Marionette Lad and now we have Hamlin, we've actually got a couple of decent things on board that are going to really stick. And of course they went for some insane damage that turn. But we are going to get that little bit of healing, we're going to get a okay chance to take this out. And using our last Evo point, we can at least drop down to the Destruction in black, which has much more value right now. The odds of them killing us from here is reasonably low, since I don't think there's any other major storm they can use, and the only good play is what they're doing right now with the Holy Lord Ector to deal 7 damage, or 9 damage with the Evo, which does leave us on just 3, but with the mass amount of healing we've got, we can actually take ourselves right past 10 again. Which is going to be very hard to counter, which obviously our opponent realizes and does end up conceding. So this is pretty much what the final version of PortalCraft is kind of looking like, at least for competitive scene. This is what I saw most people running in the Shadowverse open events and such like that, and it's really solid. I really can't fault how good and reliable this deck is as far as it goes, and while it can brick occasionally, it's very rare that I end up in that situation where I don't have a out. So it's always great to play. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, you'll find the decklist in the description below. Until next time, see ya.